I think it was Muriel Rukeyser who said that the universe is not made up of atoms, it's made up of stories, right? I am by natural nature a slightly rebellious person. For someone like me, Lord Shiva is like the natural god I'll get attracted to.
Yes, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
But who am I to judge someone who likes order, who likes compliance, and therefore is attracted to Lord Ram, as my elder brother Anish Da is?
The Mahabharat we know was written by Rishi Vedvyas Ji.
Vedvyas ji,
His name is Vedvyas Ji. So he was also the compiler of the Vedas.
Yes.
And then he wrote the Mahabharat as well to make it accessible.
There are those who say the Mahabharat is perhaps the fifth Veda because it explains it all in a story.
You guys depended on. And
Good
how
question.
did it work?
I think perhaps the better word than nebulous would be plastic. Plastic, I mean that it's adaptable. There is a strength and solidity in that. We are the only pre-Bronze Age culture that is still alive. We must have some strength that we are still here. Every other pre-Bronze Age culture was wiped out. And as I said, most of them were killed.
What is
actually.
that? Kuch to hai.
कुछ बात है.
ये सदियों रहा है दुश्मन दौरे जमा हमारा, कुछ बात है कि हस्ती मिटती नहीं हमारी.
Words of Muhammad Iqbal.
Muhammad Iqbal, ironically. But so there is a central solidity and strength, but we adapt as well, right? We take the best of the new, but we stubbornly hold on to the best of the old. We refuse to be overwritten. And I guess the best thing that describes that is actually plastic, right? We are
Malleable.
Yeah. But with us, if you're so malleable that you're just a doormat, then you have no existence of your own, right? But if you're so rigid that you break, then you're gone, right?
So
we have the best of both.
Yeah.
So, in this then it's more a library than a specific book, right? You find the path that works for you. The first standard, the entry level is always Ramayana and Mahabharata, always, right? Then from there you find various different incidents. They refer to Puranas, they refer to the Vedas, they refer to the Upanishads, they refer to the Brahmanas, the Aryanas. And then you read what path works for you, right? Didi, if you want to add to this.
No, it's a complete answer.
But what I sort of gathered from this is the Mahabharata, the way it was written, was sort of, he has made it easier for the common man to understand the complexities of the Upanishads, the Vedas also.
True. Because through a story, look, we are essentially story-consuming creatures, right?
Yes.
I think it was Muriel Rukeyser who said that the universe is not made up of atoms, it's made up of stories, right? And when philosophy comes garbed in a story, it's just much easier to absorb. That's what the Ramayana and the Mahabharata do. But they don't just teach us philosophy, they teach us governance, they teach us geography. That's why the Ramayana and Mahabharata in our gurukuls, pathshalas, everywhere, it was always the first thing you start
Foundational book,
with, right? Both. And I genuinely, I've said this often, we must teach it in our education system, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. It should begin with it. And then you'll notice like the way Ramayana and Mahabharata are structured. You'll have, it's a bit like if you're on the internet and you have a hypertext, right? So there'll be an incident just going in a flashback to explain a point at this point of time. And then it'll come back to the main narrative.
Yes.
Then another incident, it'll come back. Now, you have the freedom to explore that incident a little deeper, right?
Yeah.
Because it was an incident that was mentioned, say, in the Skanda Puran. Then read the Skanda Puran now. So it's like the internet, right? You have a core website that you go to, which is in our way the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. They are the foundational texts, right? The first standard, right? And then discover what works for you and then go deeper out there. And you will find what works for you. No one will say this is the one truth. You better follow it. Otherwise you're going to burn in hell for
That's the
eternity.
strain that Amish keeps coming to, that there's no one way.
There isn't. Because you are different from me. Right? So you will discover your own path. Like, I am by natural nature a slightly rebellious person. So someone like me, Lord Shiva is like the natural god I'll get attracted to.
Yes, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
But who am I to judge someone who likes order, who likes compliance, and therefore is attracted to Lord Ram, as my elder brother Anish Da is. He's attracted to Lord Ram because he is that kind of person.
In the book you say Lord Shiva is like the biker god. So I mean you're absolutely right. So it's basically what you make of it. But you begin with this foundational thing that the Mahabharata and the Ramayan.
And
also,
Ishan,
sorry,
if
go
I
ahead.
can add,
Thank you.
a bit to this, the Mahabharat we know was written by Rishi Vedvyas ji.
Vedvyas ji,
His name is Vedvyas ji, so
Yeah.
he was also the compiler of the Vedas.
Yes.
And then he wrote the Mahabharata as well to make it accessible,
Yeah.
to the beginners.
Yeah.
Valmiki ji himself wrote 3 versions of the Ramayana.
Yes.
Bakarvadi you can take.
So the greatest author in India, you could say, is Vedvyas ji when you think about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And his original name was actually Krishna Dwaipaya.
Dwaipana,
Yes.
the forest, right?
Yeah. So Dwaipayan is actually who was born on an island,
Okay,
Dvipa.
okay, yeah.
And Krishna because he was dark skinned.
Dark skin, yes.
But Vedvyas was actually a title. Those who compiled the Vedas for that age get the title of Vedvyas. So Krishna Dwaipayan ji is the Vedvyas of our age because he compiled the Vedas. And yeah, Didi said rightly, there are those who say the Mahabharata is perhaps the 5th Veda because it explains it all in a story so that you can understand.
Yeah.
Because the Vedas can be hard to understand.
Yes.
And it's also all, you'll see creative people, whether a singer, a dancer, a movie maker, they'll take stories from the Mahabharata.
Oh, yeah.
It's so compelling
Yeah.
to make any art form based on something that you've read in Mahabharata, and it clicks. Certain stories click for you, certain stories click for somebody else with the Mahabharata. I just interviewed Prakash Jha, the filmmaker, and he's made a movie, which has Rajniti, which was like similar to
Mahabharata.
Mahabharata.
absolutely.
to Mahabharata.
Yes.
He took
Yes.
some of the characters were from there.
Kali Yuga, that delightful movie.
That movie, yes.
Starring Shashi Kapoor.
Yes, that was so beautifully
Fabulous
made. Yeah,
movie.
at that time. And then many of us have read, but there is this thing, is it true what they say that Mahabharat ko ghar mein nahi rakhna chahiye, ladaiyan ho jati hai? Tell me about that.
I've studied in South India. I don't think this thing
It's
is
not
there
there
in South India.
India. Yeah.
हमारे घर में है महाभारत.
Yeah, he has it
हम
in
नहीं
his
लड़ते.
house.
So हम नहीं लड़ते.
So if the derivative holiest book, the Song of the
Yeah.
Gods, the Gita, is from the Mahabharata,
How can
you remove
नहीं,
the...
वो कहते
You-
गीता
you know,
रख सकते हैं.
But
I
you
don't
know,
understand.
one of the things that happened, I have this theory that the kind of attacks that we faced over the last 1,000 years, Will Durant had said the Turkic invasion of India was perhaps the bloodiest in human history.
Yes.
No invasion has led to more deaths than the Turkic invasion. What we call the Delhi Sultan Mughals. They were Turks. They didn't look like Ranveer Singh
No,
or
no. The desecration of our temples,
Prithviraj Kapoor.
all of that.
They
Yes.
weren't Indian. We must clarify that. The establishment historians have done a disservice to India by calling it the Islamic invasion, making it out like some Indian Muslims were ruling us. The Indian Pasmanda Muslims were as oppressed at that time as the Indian Hindus. We are very clear that the British were foreigners. Even in our movies, we'll show them as white speaking English. But we'll show the Turkic invaders as Indians speaking Urdu. Urdu is our language. It wasn't their language. Right? Their language was Turkic. Anyway, but coming back, this invasion was so brutal. And the British invasion was much more insidious, much more intellectual.
Actually, this is not even said in Pakistan. You know?
and-
when they don't call it the Turkish invasion, I mean, they don't use the word Turkish or invasion, but they refer to it as Islamic.
That we came.
Yeah.
That's
They say
another-
we came. That's,
They have
it's
their
like-
own identity
It's like
crisis.
chickens. It's
Yeah.
like chickens celebrating KFC. I mean, it's a little strange.
Most
but
Pakistanis
anyway,
think they're
but
Arabic
anyway,
descendants also. So, I mean,
but the invasion was so brutal that it led to changes in our history. Didi had pointed out something really insightful. Why? Because you find almost no ancient temple north of Karnataka. If you want to see a really ancient temple, you have to go down to Tamil Nadu or Kerala because that's where the invaders didn't reach.
Please
right?
don't
Deep
ignore
enough.
my state, Karnataka.
But the Hoysala, the great Belur, Halebe
Yeah,
temples
Belur.
were attacked.
Yeah, they were.
Right?
Correct.
And they were among the most beautiful temples on earth. Right?
Yeah.
So, what actually, in Delhi, we are sitting in Delhi from the slave dynasty, 1200, to the British era, around 1860, 1865. Not one temple was built in Delhi, right? You find no ancient freestanding temple in North India. You'll only find ruins because they were all destroyed, right? And a result of that was actually temples moved within the house, right? It's not so common in Tamil Nadu or Kerala in ancient
Yeah.
times because the only place we could keep our temples safe was in the puja ghar at home. Right? Adi, if you want to expand on that.
So
you,
this was,
in the book also it's there, right? About
Ganpati
this-
Visarjan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Ganpati
Yeah.
Visarjan.
Sanjeev Sanyal also mentions this in the book. That
Taking out celebration.
That
Yeah.
Bal Gangadhar Tilak ji, the
Correct.
fact that
Divided.
he said that let's get the Ganpati Visarjan going again.
Yes.
We won't stop. Just because the British want us to stop. Well, let's bring it out. It's a form of political. It was a political message as well to gather the masses around this, beautiful sort of iconography
And
that is
that
there.
we can celebrate outside our homes as well,
Right.
as we did in the pre-invasion times.
Yeah.
So my, a cousin-in-law of ours called Sunil Nair, he's a Keralite. He's a scientist in ICER and in Pune. My cousin Ashna is also a scientist. They're both physicists in ICER. And he had pointed it out to me. I wasn't aware of this. He said that to me that Didi, in Kerala, for instance, or even South India largely, the paddat of keeping the puja ghar at home is actually the result of Bollywood and the North's influence in probably the last 50 or 70 years, because the Hindus in the North faced the invasions. In the South, even Islam came commercially, through commerce. In the North, it came through invasions. And, which is when the invasions came, why have we survived? As opposed to our fellow idol worshippers of the ancient past. Because we went silent. But our temples moved within our homes. Which is not a practice so much in South India. Historical practice नहीं है. ये North Indian practice है. हर घर में पूजा घर. Yeah, हर घर में पूजा घर. Temples have moved in.
In the book, though, there were some holdouts, even with the invasion. You do mention about Dara Shoko, though.
Yes.
That he was one of the outliers who actually did do us a service and our culture a service by translating, I think, the Kashi Vishwanath, the verses over there. What can you just tell us a little bit
The
about that?
Upanishads. He
Upanishad.
translated the
The
Upanishads.
mingling of two oceans.
From Sanskrit to Persian. Absolutely. So, there were good British officers as well during the British era and not the Christian era. We do not call the British period the Christian period. So there were good British officers as well.
So then why do we call the
And-
Turkic period the Islamic?
Yes.
They were Turks.
So
They were
Dara
foreigners.
Shikho was a good man, as was Akbar, but they were not Indian. They were Turks and Mughals. Mughals. Why do we call them Mughal at all? Why don't we call them Mongol? And because that's the origin. They were Mongols, and the minute we call them Mongols, the debate ends. The Mongol period.
It's in the word
The
itself.
Turkish
The
period.
etymology is.
They
Yes.
themselves
Yeah.
were Turkic Mongols. They called themselves Temurid. They didn't call themselves Mughal. They called themselves Temurid or Gokarna, which is the son-in-law of Genghis Khan. So they were part Turkic, part Mongol.
Gokarna.
Gokarna.
Wow. Okay,
Not the place.
not
Gokarna.
That's where the shivling is.
Yes, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me now come, to the book. Amish, you've been on television debates. Well, not debates, but discussions.
Yeah,
but
I
you
don't really do debates,
Did
no.
debates. You've been interviewed by all the top anchors in our country, and you have watched the debates. Most people are very angry with the way television debates have gone, and that I found resonance in the book, because just to connect it with today, when you say, and I'm going to quote from the book, you say, we often discount even a sensible input from a person we dislike just because we do not like the source from whom the input is coming, even if it appeals to our senses. Instead, we must learn to respond. Reaction is immediate, response is centered. So it implies a time gap. Even silence is a response. So Lopamudra, who's one of the characters in the book, says that basically don't let others control the strings, don't get triggered. And then it goes on to Lord Buddha and one of the stories which you link, and I'm not going to do a spoiler and narrate that. But it brings us today to some of the things which are happening in our society where it can just be Swachh Bharat message which Mr. Modi is doing. That will be debated and that will be rejected by certain people where I'm not going to accept this. It could be something about demonetization said by another politician saying that it didn't serve the purpose. The right wingers will reject that. Not take the message, but color it by the person. So how does one change that? One is, of course, the don't react, respond. How does one bring that discipline within you? How do you become a listener, analyze? What does it happen? What
It's
do
an
our texts say?
attitude. It's an attitude. Again, among the greatest debates that ever happened, Adi Shankaracharya ji and Madan Mishra, do you know who the judge was for that debate? And remember the
Where
way
did
it
it
works
happen?
in the Indian 7th century. So
Where
around-
did it happen?
In Ujjain. So around 1300, 1400 years ago, right? It was
Adi Shankaracharya was a Shiv Bhakt also,
yes,
right?
and Mandana Mishra was a Buddhist.
Was a Buddhist, yeah.
And the judge was Mandana Mishra's wife, Ubhaya Bharati. Okay? It says something of the honor and respect that women had in those days. Remember, a judge is actually above the debaters, right? You would assume that she has
She didn't
more
recuse
knowledge.
herself.
That she has more knowledge.
Huh.
And she decided Adi Shankaracharya ji is the winner, right?
Very Buddhist of her.
No, it shows that because actually in those days Buddhism and Hinduism wasn't really seen as different. In North India, Gautam Buddha is seen as the ninth avatar of Lord Vishnu. So it's a modern. We can be Hindu. In fact, it's one of the points we make in the book. In Japan, there's 67% Shintos, 70% Buddhists. So
Right,
adds
right.
up to more than 100.
Yeah.
It's because in India, I can be a Sikh, Hindu, and Buddhist at the same time.
Yeah.
We don't believe in binaries. But the point I was trying to make is that you look at the arguments and listen calmly, breathe, right? And it's one of the things I know it's more difficult to do in today's day because the public square is such, mass media is such, social media is such. Social media is designed to put you into a rabbit hole of more extremism.
Yeah.
It's very instructive that most of the creators of smartphones and social media, and you can check this, that the top billionaires and multimillionaires who created, they don't allow their own children to be on social media, right? Till they become old enough. And yet we allow our children to just, get onto it because the algorithm is such. So best thing you can do, what I try and do also, what all of us try and do, listen to those whose views you disagree with. But try and find the best of that point of view, right? So Neil Ferguson, for example, right? He actually defends the British Raj. He thought it was a good idea. I very viscerally disagree with him. But he's not some random idiot. He's one of the smartest men in the world, right? Real intellectual, real scholar. So I like to read his books, right? To challenge me. It's one of the ways to do it. And there's this lovely line which is there in the Natya Shastra. Satyam bruat priyam bruat. Na bruat satyam apriyam. Speak the truth, but speak it with love. And if you cannot speak the truth with love, then stay silent. It doesn't say lie. Just stay silent, right? And wait for the right time to speak. But essentially the value of good manners, speaking politely. You'll be surprised how much you can communicate to another person if you're just polite. If you just have basic manners and try and listen to the best point of view from the other side as well, you may just learn something, right? And this in the Indian way comes very naturally. This is what we try and get across in this book, Idols. That's why you see there are different points of view, but they debate respectfully with each other. That's the way it is in our family as well. We don't agree on everything. Look, if two people agree on absolutely everything, one of them is not required, right? It's the way the world is supposed to be.
Yeah.
But if you listen respectfully, you'll grow.
This is where I want to bring in the Greek element in this book. Where did that connection come from?
Devi.
So I'm fascinated by the lovely stories from the ancient fellow travelers of ours in the path of paganism. Let's reclaim that word proudly, paganism, from all around the world. And they are lovely stories, from Pandora to even Narcissus. Imagine they had a god of narcissism. How amazing is that?
Wine, Dionysus, Soma.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I found those stories fascinating, and there's a parallel, among all these stories. So we have our Surya Dev, and the ancient Egyptians had
not Zeus.
Amon.
Amon, yeah.
And absolutely. So, the sun god Helios.
Helios,
you know.
right. Yeah.
So Apollo, was truth,
And
order,
those temples
light.
to these Greek gods, if
Were
you go to
destroyed.
Cyprus, you go to...
Ruins.
There's no worshipping of those.
Yeah.
Like यहाँ पे सूर्य देव को you'll worship. You'll go,
But they're also in ruins now.
कुछ नहीं है यहाँ पे
No, you
दीपोत्सव
go
होगा
out there,
कुछ
you
नहीं।
see
Yeah.
the murtis of Athena, for example, nose cut off, hand
Every-
cut off,
yeah.
very
Mutilated.
similar.
Yeah.
And a
experience.
lot of them, temple of Apollo was brought down in Egypt, and the church of John the Baptist was built,
top of it.
atop. Or
But
was
we've
it?
also got destroyed temples, but with nose cut off, arms cut off. वहाँ पे पूजा नहीं होती है. But then there was another temple built again by another king or another, not necessarily a ruler. There were people from the community who built a temple and said, let's worship that क्योंकि ये desecrate हो गया है. A broken idol is not worshipped. So you create it. But that didn't happen in Western civilization.
They surrendered.
They surrendered. It was over.
Somnath Ji was rebuilt 17 times.
times.
One of the reasons our ancestors were stubborn people. Stubborn people. You lose only when you surrender. Yeah. हार जीत होती रहती है. Some battles you win, some battles you lose.
Yeah.
That's a way of life. But you lose permanently only when you surrender. Our ancestors never surrender.